Well, welcome, folks. This is the Town of Kennebunkport Planning Board for February the 7th, 2024. First, I'll check attendance. George is not here today, but everybody else is. So George sent me an email that he wasn't going to make it. So, okay, next step is approval of the minutes of the last meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, I'm going to abstain. I wasn't there, so.
Approve, yeah,
Okay, so it's approved.
yeah.
Which brings us to something which we haven't, other than a brief description, seen since March. This is the KJ item number 240101, KJ Trudeau Properties, the Glen at Goose Rock subdivision. This is the initial review of the final subdivision plan. So, take it away. And introduce yourself.
Yep. Hello, everybody. I'm Jason Vafiatis with Atlantic Resource Consultants. You're used to seeing Lucian here, but he just had a baby last week, so his wife or partner did. So he's on paternity leave, so I'm filling in for him.
All right.
But I did do the design and the engineering on this project, so I'm pretty familiar with it. If you recall, it's been here, I think, in this form, somewhat less evolved for about 2 years now, I believe.
Yep.
Yep.
9-lot, single-family subdivision. We have the MDEP stormwater permit, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers NERPA Tier 1 permit with all the, those are all in hand, with all the various components involved with those, which were stream crossings and all the other little dandy things that we did. And to quote Peter Olmsted of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, it's probably one of the, they use this project to show people for maximum conservation within building lots. You see in your plan set, all 22 sheets of it, that
Oh, yeah.
we really do sort of bring the building envelopes very tight and conserve a lot of land around the lots, given the natural resources that are on that site. So, project I'm actually pretty proud to have done, and we're here, I think, because we timed out. It took so long getting the state permits in file, and so I believe 99.9% of the review has been done from the municipal level, and we're just going through the process again.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so why don't you, since we have an audience here, just describe the project a little bit, you know.
Sure, yep, so.
We're all familiar with it.
Yeah, so it's, there's a plan here that actually people can see if they're interested, as well as one on the front. It's 9-lot subdivision. It's a segment of road, one road in, sort of lollipops out to two segments of the road once you get a little bit in. There's a big buffer off of Goose Box Road where there'll be no development. You'll just see a road go in, and then at least 150 feet of woods up to you get to the first house on the left. The building lots, as I was talking about, are very tight. There's a lot of conservation on each lot. We use easements through a lot to sort of bring driveways sort of away from natural resources, kind of taking advantage of the uplands every bit that we can. We have stormwater control features out there, which include a lot of what we call low-impact development best management practices. Little tiny gravel wetlands, planted bioretention filters. It's just it's like a little 6-inch deep, basically garden bed with a lot of plantings and stuff in them that the water goes into, slowly filters through a treatment layer, and then back out a pipe outlet. And that's pretty much it. The site will remain 90% wooded after we're done through here, about 43 acres of lands. Just your
All right.
standard
Now,
subdivision.
back in March, we sent a letter of approval of the preliminary plan.
Yes.
And there were a number of things that I believe you're still going to ask for a waiver on the road length.
Yes, so we exceed I believe your road, maximum length of road is 1,000 feet. And if you go around the cul-de-sac, we're a little longer than 1,000 feet. And so we are requesting a waiver for, a tiny waiver, but a waiver nonetheless for length of roadways.
Then you had a bunch of responses and updates from Acorn Engineering, which I looked through somewhat. And,
Stormwater management, yeah.
yeah, and the HOA agreements, I did see that you have the pesticide, herbicide, fertilizer requirements, or the restrictions against. And it seemed, I mean, it looks like you covered the whole deal of this this letter. From what
I think so, yeah.
So I guess I'll pass it on to Larry, since you were
Okay.
the manager the first time.
Well, thanks for this. This is a very comprehensive package. I was impressed with the amount of information, the detailed level of information. I really appreciate it. But could you step around and just point out the 9 lots on here, because I was trying to count them, because it's actually 10 lots. It's 9 residential plus 1 conservation area, right?
Yes, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's not obvious, like, from this distance where they're located, just for info.
Yeah, so the open space is actually what I would call a perimeter lot.
Okay.
And so it fronts onto Goose Rocks Road and then wraps all the way around the entire subdivision.
Okay.
Thickens up in the back, goes around this way, down through here, and then back down to Goose Rocks
Okay.
Road. Yep.
That's good. Yeah, all right.
Yep. Theory being that there could be a trail around the exterior of the subdivision. And there are easements to access this open space at the end of each road.
And then the other 9 are the gray shaded areas?
Yes,
Okay.
this may help you a little more. So here's our entrance again. And so I actually, on the concept development plan, we actually put a standard house in there so you could see. So there's lot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 going around.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I appreciate it. And could you turn it back to the other one?
Sure.
Because I guess the green is the wetlands,
Yes,
and I saw you're going to have to cross, 8,000 square feet of wetland, something like that?
Yep.
So, so when that happens, I think there's a requirement to have an offsetting conservation area. How are you doing that?
so we have preserved, let me go back to this other plan.
All right?
You see these dark shaded areas?
Yeah,
These are areas that are in permanent conservation. So,
Okay.
and that includes both the resource, the wetlands, as well as uplands contained within typically what you'd have in a buffer of
Okay.
the wetlands,
all right.
as well as buffer of the stream. So that darker hatch is wetland fill. The medium colored hatch is all the conservation.
Okay, all right.
It's over
so-
9-to-1.
So DEP has approved
Yes,
that?
DEP
and
has
Corps-
approved
Corps
it.
of Engineer, does the Corps of Engineer, okay.
Yep.
Well, if they like it, I like it too. So, so I did have a couple of other questions. So, on the application, looks very thorough. I did notice that, okay, it's a flood, it's a flood area, right? So you could,
Yep, there was a Zone B, which
Okay.
is this red line.
uh-huh,
Yep.
okay, all right. And then the estimated cost for infrastructure improvements, you didn't put that on the application, but that I did see your number in the back. So is that all inclusive? I mean, just refer to appendix, whatever it is here. There is a cost estimate shown. Did you just want to refer the reader to the, wherever it is in here, to the financial capacity, section 5, see section 5?
Yep.
Okay. It's not a big deal, but you might want to just
Yeah,
double check.
we can give you an official copy. We'll fix that.
Might
refer
just
to it.
for completeness.
Yep.
And then I had a few other questions. Okay. We talk about nonlinear treatment stormwater management, well, nonlinear treatment. What is nonlinear treatment? I'm not familiar with that term.
So, sure. So nonlinear treatment, the DEP classifies two types of impervious area. One is linear and one is nonlinear.
Oh.
The linear refers to simply roadway. So the DEP will give you a little bit of, I like to call it a little bit of wiggle room as far as the treatment standards for roadways, because they're required to access uplands through wetlands, things like that. That's why you can easily get a permit for wetland fill for a road, but not necessarily for a house, right?
Okay.
So linear treatment, they require a less 70% treatment instead of 95%, because it's a needed component of infrastructure to get the value of your land that you have. So typically, I think the intent behind it. So they have two. So when you do a subdivision, you can treat the roadway up to 70% of the impervious, but the house lots, a building, a parking lot would need to be 95%, and that's where that designation comes in.
So the nonlinear refers to the
Lots.
lots
Yep.
for houses.
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. And, okay, we talked about the wetlands, and, okay, then I did have a couple of questions in the, in your HOA, which I appreciate, very thorough. Thank you for doing that, it's really
Sure.
great. So you had two things in there that I thought were very interesting. One is the, oh boy. Declaration of restriction, forested buffer declaration, and the conservation covenants and restrictions. Are these exclusive, or are they overlapping? I mean, could you just talk about those two a little more?
Sure. So each review authority, they don't. So this is Army Corps of Engineers and MDEP. They work under the same set of rules, but they review things on a parallel but different track.
Oh.
And so things we do for Army Corps, DEP sometimes doesn't require. Things we do for DEP, Army Corps of Engineers doesn't require. So they're short answer is yes, they're overlapping conservation easements
Okay,
for both entities. And there's actually two sets of plans
Oh.
that show those, and they're in your plan set. So, and then a copy of that specific plan would be recorded with, as well as, because they apply specifically to lots. So each lot would have its own conservation plan, which I believe you have in your plan set.
so each lot would have a forested buffer declaration restriction and a conservation covenant.
Yep, it would be attached to the deed. Yep.
Wow, okay, all right. Okay,
We don't want to do it, but we do it, because
Well,
it's
thank
a
you.
lot
Yeah,
of,
that-
it's a lot of burden on the
I know
on the
you
applicant.
covered, looks like you covered all the bases. Anyway, so then I was also very impressed with the stormwater management. This is, again, this is an incredible document here. So honestly, I didn't have any questions on this. I mean, it's, you got it covered. So that's it, that's all, that's all my questions.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the kind words. Thanks.
Mike, do you have anything on this?
The only thing that stood out to me, and I know we asked you to do it, was put in the maintenance piece for the stormwater treatment. And it just seems a bit complex. I mean, it fits what you needed, but again, how does it actually get done going forward, I guess is my point. And I don't think we have a solution to that. Getting it in the agreement and having it all laid out is a good start, but that doesn't make me feel that in 10 years it's gonna happen. And I don't know how that's addressed, because this is the best solution. You did exactly what we asked, but still reading it, I was kind of like, wow, that's a big ask for a 9 housing community.
Well, if the road starts to fall apart, they'll have to.
Yeah,
And the HOA can designate through penalties
yeah, it just,
if somebody's not doing a clean out or something.
yeah, it's a lot of work that they're gonna be taking on, and the HOA agreement, I think, is the only way to actually address it, but it seems like that's a lot to be asking a 9-house HOA to be doing, and expect it to actually be done, even if it's in there, you know, in the agreement. But I don't know of any other fix.
Do you envision it being subcontracted?
Yeah, you know, you
Like,
could.
we get our field mowed, you know, the individual homeowners don't take
Yeah.
turns mowing it,
Yeah.
we're all get an assessment. It seems like it would,
If it's handled that way by it's outsourced,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, the
yeah,
outsource.
and it's just part of the dues, just like snow removal would be, yeah,
Yeah.
it stands a chance.
it seems to be the most likely, as it,
Yeah.
it's
But
not
it's-
clear
it's
that all of these will be year-round people
Yeah,
and et cetera, et
It's
cetera.
a great system and everything, it just requires a lot of care and maintenance to make it function.
I understand, this won't be the last one. that-
Yeah, I know, we've run across this before, and you did exactly what we asked you to do. I'm still trying to figure out how that's gonna work 20 years from now, but,
So this may or may not alleviate your concerns, but 99% of the time, so the document you have in front of you actually isn't all that different than what we do in other towns. 99% of the time, they do a good job building the road. I wouldn't worry about the road, anything like that. Stormwater features do require more maintenance than a roadway would. It's not expensive, but time consuming, right? So they call us, and then they say, can you come do an inspection? We put them in touch with, if there are physical things that need to be, if there are corrective actions that need to be taken, we have a list of 20 landscape contractors that we work with. We say, hey, give these guys a call, get a quote, just 3 of these people will give you a quote. It's usually just never more than like $1,000 to get in there, rototill a filter bed, pull some of the dead deleterious materials out of it, and you're good to go. Clean an outfall out, remove the stone, put clean stone down. So it's not, it seems like a lot, but it actually happens pretty easily. I can give you a list of subdivisions we did 5 years ago. You can go look at them. They're fine.
And as you say, as you see more and more of these being attended to, that tends to develop an infrastructure that can support them.
Yes, yeah.
I think just that getting it in the document
Yeah,
and
it's
getting
good.
part of the, the requirements was the key part for us.
it's there.
Yeah. Okay, Ed, do you have anything? Okay.
Thank you, Noel.
I have a couple of questions. Remind me, the fire chief has okayed the length of the road?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I wanted to point out that your certificate of good standing is almost 3 years old now, and it would be a good idea for this application to get a new one and just submit it to the office
Yep.
to
Yep.
improve in
We'll,
there.
we'll update that.
Yeah, and did you say you have the permits now?
Yes, and
You-
the town staff has them
And
as
the
well.
towns have them?
Yep.
Okay. I was impressed with your HOA as well. I thought it was really nice that you put in that
Mm-hmm.
no trees may be cut or sprayed and so forth. And the only thing I would add to these things is when you say no trucks, cars, dirt bikes and so forth, add snowmobiles to that.
Oh, yeah.
You do say motorized vehicles, but some people think their snowmobiles are an exception. So, and I just want to ask a curiosity question. The perimeter lot, is that going to be open to the public? Or is this just for the homeowners?
That's probably more a question for John, but I believe it's just for the homeowners, correct? Yeah, yeah, it's owned collectively by the homeowners.
Okay,
Private property.
okay. That's all I had.
Okay.
Just one, what is the actual length of the waiver of the road?
Oh, that's a good question. I believe it was like 1065 or something like that, the stationing around the C200, I'll tell you, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I think everybody thinks this is pretty well complete and ready
just add
to,
a
ready to go.
brief
for-
comment. In my past, I've had you folks looking at the length of the road straight through to the far end of the cul-de-sac instead of all the way around. And if that was less than 1,000 feet, that was the length of the road. So you could deliberate whether all the way around the loop is still part of that road construct of length, or you might consider straight through to the far end of the cul-de-sac. I'd leave it up to you, but I've had projects that have had that limitation, and you saw fit to approve them. So I don't know whether the length around the cul-de-sac loop is problematic and makes it so this waiver needs to be.
I don't think we have any problem granting the waiver, Jim. And
Yeah.
it's-
All right, we've,
the road length is documented in the plan now, so I wouldn't want to
and,
ask him to change it.
Yeah, oh, no,
and the fire chief is happy with it, so.
Yeah.
So are we.
All good.
yeah.
Big enough to
No
get it.
points off for the waiver, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so, I guess I'll take a motion to,
I move to
complete?
approve the, or to say the application is complete?
I'll second that.
Okay, so, Ed,
Yes, I agree.
Approve.
approve?
Approve.
Approve.
Okay, so that means that in a couple weeks, 2 weeks, I guess, we will have a public hearing on this. And then once it's approved, we have to get some stuff to sign.
Yep, yep.
But beyond that, so, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay, see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Secondly, Larry's been doing an awful lot of things lately, and I wondered, Mike, if you would mind
Write
taking
this
this
one up.
over
Yep,
as,
I will consult with Larry and get her done.
We can do it, Mike.
We can do it?
Yeah.
There you go. You'll carry me across the line?
Yeah, no problem.
Absolutely. Excellent.
all right. So, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 231001, Wilds District subdivision, Beechwood Development Fund. Mike, Adam Wheeland, his agent. So, you just sent us a huge new response, so why don't you discuss it for a while, please?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm Mike Tadamo Wheeland with Teradyne Consultants. Jeff Bowley is in the back here with me. He's the applicant. And Jim Logan, who is the wetland scientist on the project, as you know, is here as well. First, I want to apologize for not submitting this in the time frame that we discussed last meeting. If you've noticed, the date of the field report from DEP that I included in the packet, it came after after the meeting that we missed. So we had to, because we know that that's really what the biggest piece of information people were waiting on. We withheld it and waited until we received that. But you're right, I have submitted, what I've submitted is as we discussed at the last meeting, a response to Acorn's peer review comments, which is, quite lengthy. It was a thorough review. I would say the majority of the bulk of the package is the revised stormwater management report. There's a lot of software output in that package, which leads to a lot of the bulk. And then in addition to the response to comments, we submitted Mr. Logan's wetland summary report, which describes his findings, his site visits and his findings on natural resources on the site. And attached to that was a field or a letter from Anna Smith at DEP, in which she describes her visit or maybe visits to the site with Jim Logan, and what her sort of determination on some of these features was. And the vast majority of the peer review comments were pretty technical. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm happy to answer any questions. One of them that that I think is important to point out is the addition of a stormwater management BMP to provide stormwater or treatment through filtration and detention for runoff from the road. This was something. It's a relatively small project. You know, a 3-lot subdivision it's not insignificant, but it's relatively small, and projects of this size don't always require stormwater treatment. But Acorn did pointed to a section of the ordinance that we had missed, and so we did add stormwater treatment for the road for 80% of the roadway surface, which meets DEP's Chapter 500 requirements. The other thing I'll point out is related to the drainage channel and the pond, and so I'll just sort of summarize Jim's findings and the letter from the DEP staffer. So you'll recall Jim originally determined the pond that's adjacent to this site and partially onto the site did not meet the criteria for a wetland of special significance. Through the information we have, determined it to be man-made and of a size, and regardless of the fact that it's man-made, it's of a size that doesn't trigger that qualification of wetland of special significance, and I think the Miss Anna Smith from DEP agreed with that. With regard to the drainage ditch that leaves that pond and traverses the property and drains off-site to the south, Jim and Anna walked that, and it was Anna's opinion that a portion of that did meet the criteria to qualify as a stream under the state definition. So there is approximately a 200-foot stretch of that drainage channel that the DEP has determined is a stream, and we've added that to our plan. It comes with a 75-foot regulatory setback associated with it, which we've added to the plans, and you'll see that 75-foot setback encroaches into the proposed building areas on lots 2 and 3, but the DEP does allow for a reduction in that setback from 75 feet down to as little as 25 feet with a permit by rule. So those areas within lots 2 and 3, we'll file a permit by rule for those 2 areas in order to achieve the buildable areas that we're showing on the plan. Mm-hmm. Other than that, the plan remains the same as you've seen it in the past. So rather than go into all of that again, I'll open it up for questions.
You're up.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, there are a couple places where you need to do some housekeeping on this. Where you submitted a second application there, where it says map, lot, and so forth. That needs to be clarified because those numbers are not correct for that.
The map and lot?
Yeah, you
Okay.
need to put in, let me just get to it. Yeah, you've got map 23003, no block, and lots 9, 10, and 23, that's all messed up.
Okay.
It's map 9, block 10, lot 23. And you need to file probably a corrected page to the
Okay.
office. Let me get correct on the permits, because you said the permits were in a permit block, but I couldn't find them on the application. You have an ACOE permit pending?
Yeah, so they're listed on the cover sheet,
They're listed on the cover sheet.
of the plan cover sheet, the plans.
Oh, on the plan sheet, okay, I can find them then. Which one is it? That's the cover sheet, okay.
So
I
the
got
first,
that
the
one.
first page, there's
All right,
a,
I thought you were going to the cover sheet of the application.
no, I'm sorry.
So I couldn't find that, so I can find those. And you have 3 waivers, basically, that you're asking for. To waive the road side slope, to waive the high-intensity soil survey, and to waive the requirement for sidewalks.
Correct.
Correct, okay. So I follow that. Oh. I see the stream setback, and I see the road plan that you have now. And now that the significant trees are in there, I have some concerns, okay? Because if you look at C2, these plants drive me crazy. You've got on the road itself, with evergreen and deciduous trees, 3, 6, 9 significant trees you plan to take out. Large trees, 100-foot or more, okay, are also very significant in that they hold water and they pull water through. And you're in an area with ups and downs, and neighbors are very concerned about flooding. And, you know, a tree like that will take out 11,000 gallons of water a year, just one tree alone. And so I'm wondering what you're doing there. You've got also a lot of significant trees, several of them in your building lots there. If you take those out, you could possibly have a lot of increased flooding in there, especially along the road. What are you doing? Basically, you've got a stormwater management program, but does it take into account the fact that you're taking out so many significant trees? This is not 1 or 2. This is 9 on the road alone.
Right, yeah, you know, there is a requirement to locate trees, which we've done. In most instances, on most sites, we would do our best to avoid those trees, obviously, right? I think that's the intent of locating them, just so everyone knows where they are and so the design can accommodate them. On this site, there is really almost no opportunity to move that, unfortunately. So, you know, given the design, or the orientation of the lot, unfortunately, there's not a lot of wiggle room there. As far as the runoff goes, stormwater runoff, the stormwater report does take into account changes in ground cover, of course. Obviously, forested area absorbs a lot more water, and a lot less runoff will be generated from a forested area than will pavement. I mean, that's an absolute given. So all the assumptions and calculations that go into that report absolutely take that into account.
Are you saying they take into account these trees that are being taken out? Because I need to know whether that stormwater report really takes that into account. A lot of stormwater reports, they don't bother with the fact that they take out 1 or 2 trees.
So,
But here, you're taking out a significant amount.
so I would say the stormwater management report follows the absolute standard of professional standard of analysis, which is we use methods outlined by the DEP as well as the EPA, and I think the results of that are in line with how any professional engineer would carry them out.
But I'm not sure that those really take into account a large number of trees being taken off a property. They may account for house lots and a normal road that goes through where you're clearing through brush and things. but I'm not sure that those standards really take into account how much water you're going to lose the sequestering of, to put it in a very ungrammatical way, okay? I think you ought to take another look at that.
Okay, well,
And come
sure.
back with something that.
Well, if you have, I mean, I'm
suggests-
all ears if you have, if you have some sort of guidance on that. I
I
would
have no
certainly.
guidance, but I know what trees take up,
Okay,
okay? A 100-foot tree basically has a very large leaf canopy, and it's very good for dissipating water
understood.
and protecting from floods. And so when you're deforesting in an area like this with an awful lot of water, you're going to significantly increase the flow of water.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what our, our analysis takes into account.
Okay. I would like to see that discussed a little more and pointed out,
Okay,
in terms of amount of water, that any tree reduction like that basically covers that.
Could we ask the applicant which source point, where the road's located is part of the analysis? Maybe that would help with the calculation.
I'm not sure what you mean.
So it's in the analysis that was done, they did a study point. Could you identify which study point was where the road was located when the study was complete?
in which study point the road is located?
Yes.
Yeah,
That way it helps you know which one.
That may help.
yeah, so
a
it
lot.
would go to study point 2. So the entirety of the road will drain into the pond, right? It drains back into the site, into the pond,
The large pond, the man-made one?
yes. Where it will attenuate. So as you can imagine, when you send that much stormwater into a water body of that size, and it's a large pond, the effect at the outlet is very small. So
Yeah,
which
I
is
see.
which is in effect the theory behind all detention ponds, right? Water goes in at one rate and out at a slower rate.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that the road length from Wiles District Road basically goes downward, slopes downward,
The existing land
goes downward.
does slightly, but the design is such that
Okay,
we've
but-
directed it back in order, because, the concern is runoff towards the back of the property, right? Like that's some of the concerns we've heard. So in order to address that, we're bringing stormwater to a point where it can be stored in a large volume and released at a slow rate through the channel that exists there today.
Will you have drains in there that go to the pond?
So there are, these stormwater management BMP that I talked about earlier will collect 80% of the surface area of the road, which is essentially the end of the road, almost all the way to, or 80% of the way to Wiles District Road. And it'll go through this stormwater BMP and then discharge into that pond. So it'll be treated, stored for a short period of time, and then discharged into the pond.
Okay. Because these trees are past the point of where the pond exists as you go downward into the property.
Yes, right.
Okay.
So it's not a normal crowned road where it would run just off right and left.
It's
so
super, it's what we
even
call
if-
super elevated.
It's a good, okay, so it's all feeding that way away from. Excellent. Is it curbed?
It is curbed on only the
High side?
the downhill side, right? Like, there's no need for a curb on the uphill side,
Because you're on the up, okay,
but the pond, the side where the pond is,
yeah. yeah,
it's curbed.
Curbed and
So
then
all the
collected.
water will run to that side of the road, to the low point, be collected in the stormwater treatment, BMP, and then discharged to the pond.
Good deal.
All right. something I couldn't find yet, you said you did in response to the Acorn report was indicate where the stop sign at the Wiles District goes and where the light goes at the turnaround. Hammerhead. And I looked on the maps, but I couldn't find that. Maybe I'm not finding it.
Yeah, so the stop sign is shown, but difficult to see, admittedly, on C 3.0.
C 2.0,
Yep,
3.0,
3.0.
3,
yeah.
3.0. Okay.
And the light pole has, it appears, has been mistakenly left off the plan, but it is located just before the Hammerhead turnoff, so that you know where the road. So
Okay.
we'll make that correction.
Okay. But where is the stop sign?
At the end of the road, on the right-hand side.
Is it that black dot that
Yeah.
says SF?
I will make sure it's more visible and called out better.
Okay, because I found nothing that indicated there was a stop sign there. For the entrance permit, you have on your thing an old entrance permit to Phillips, the former owner of the property. Are you going to update that?
So this came from the former code enforcement officer. And so in discussion with him, he delivered that to us and said, this is all you need. So happy to do what needs to be done, but we were under the impression that it didn't need to be updated.
Okay, well,
You know, it's been reviewed and.
it's very old, and I'm wondering if on the road and everything, and your final application, you don't need the fire chief to sign off on that and check that the entrance is okay for one of their engines.
Okay.
And that's all I have at the moment.
Just a few general questions. First one has to do with the Acorn responses, which, you know, to me, a layman, look very thorough. Typically, we'll go back to Acorn and ask them to concur. Has that already happened? Or will that happen?
I don't believe so. If you would like me to, I can.
Yeah, and as Nina was asking her questions, it occurred to me that if we're gonna do that anyway and pay for that, you're gonna pay for that. What would you think about including the question of how are large trees factored into their analysis, right? I don't think there'd be an extra charge to answer that question, and it might be a way to put this to bed.
Sure.
You know? Okay.
No.
I'm sure this isn't the only place that question has come up, and
I've worked with Acorn. They will charge for it.
I mean, I can give you a brief synopsis of it. There is a CN number that is on those pages. That is the flow determination for how they calculate it. That's,
do the trees matter to them?
yeah, they do have a code there for that.
Okay.
If you look on page.
That they're there and gonna be gone?
Yep,
Okay,
they put them, they do have a calculation. I was looking at the CN numbers.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay, again, general questions. In the course of the responses, you use some different language depending on the item that says things that aren't being answered today, they'll be provided in the future. Some things say, by the time of final approval. Some say in the application for the final plan. There's a bunch of variants, let me just leave it at that. And I'm thinking in particular, if I could just ask you, is that significant? Are you doing that intentionally because you have in mind that some of these things are not going to be available? In general, if there's a way to come in with the final plan, with all of this information, we just saw that with the previous application, how helpful it was for that HOA agreement to be with the final application, and now,
Well, didn't that project already have preliminary approval?
I'm sorry?
Didn't that project already have preliminary approval?
Yes.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
but here you're saying, but so.
So we don't have preliminary approval, right? So
You
we're-
do
we're-
not,
yeah.
but you're saying, if you say, we'll put this in as part of the final application, with the final application, that's super. If what you're saying is, well, it won't be there at the beginning of the final application, but maybe by the end, and that's gonna be problematic,
Yeah,
so.
that's not our
I
intent.
just wanted to clean up that thinking. that
Sure.
Unless there's a reason, if you could, have that package be as complete as possible, it's gonna grease the skids.
We always try to do
yeah,
that, so,
okay.
and, yeah, there's no intent to push something off here. Off the top of my head, it's homeowners documents is the big one, right? And I know that was mentioned a couple times in the letter, so that's certainly one we would submit with the final application.
Yeah,
I
it
know that
says- it
always
says here
gets, I know that
You're
always
gonna
gets,
have it prior to final approval.
okay.
And I didn't know what,
No, that, we've
It would-
we've
it
done
would
this
be in
enough
the
with this
final
board to know
package, I
that,
think.
well, that's what I'm
For
asking
sure,
for.
for
Because other
sure.
places it says it'll be in the final package. This didn't. So we're using different language. I just want to make
Yes.
sure that it's just,
As long as he knows that he won't get a final approval without it.
That's right.
well,
that'll motivate me.
yes, I think that's known, but if it can come in like that, there's so much public interest on this, and you're already seeing, a letter came in today to the office, said, hey, we just got this big book, we really don't want to close out the public meeting today. Let's get out of that business if we can, and, okay, I'm preaching now, I apologize.
And I would look at the previous HOA, it's a very nice one.
Yeah.
It's really very well written. I was impressed.
And the,
A question about the HOA, just because I'm fairly new and I need to understand the process. Is the HOA a requirement of preliminary submission, or is that something you're just giving us
No.
feedback
Thing we
as
see in the
condition
final.
for the
No.
preliminary?
It's a requirement for the final.
Right,
yeah, we're not going to ask for it to be
yep.
done here.
It's just clear what's coming in at what stage with the final.
Right.
Is it here with the final application, or we'll get it before final approval? And
Yeah, there's some
it's
other things like.
Mixed language.
Like a permit, for example, if you don't have that, you're probably not in a position to delay submittal of the final. But yeah, before the occupancy permit is there, we'll deal with those issues where it
Understood.
can't be there.
Understood.
Okay. I think the last thing I had was just, how do you propose to deal with the abutter letters? I haven't seen any responses from you to the abutter letters. I don't know that I've asked you to do that, but in most other cases, when you get letters that are this clear, and asking for specific information, it's been helpful to get a response in writing. I don't have a complete list of the abutters letters. I find that problematic, and Galen, I was gonna ask you for some help with that maybe, but
Like a list of them?
a compendium of them. I'd like them to be in a folder online so that everyone can look at them, but,
Well, there have been times with subdivision applications when we have had, and even just LUO applications, when we have had written responses to abutter letters. And other times, it's just dealt with verbally, where you feel like you've handled the question and you've answered it
Yeah.
sufficiently. So I think it's up to the applicant, really, and how they want to handle it.
I would, my
I'm
preference.
sorry, are you disagreeing with my request? Is that what you're saying?
No, no. I think
I'm missing your point.
it's a good request, if they want to, but I think it's really up to the applicant whether they want to or not. You can,
So I think
I
Nina's overruling me. I'm not sure, but
From an admin,
Try to
I'm
make it
telling you,
smooth.
let's not make this a requirement and add to all the subdivisions. that
I'm
go to it.
asking, and Nina's disagreeing, so you can take that for how you want. I'm asking for a response to the abutters' letters that is comprehensive. I'd like to know that all of the letters have been put before you and that you've answered them. Whether you do that at the podium or in writing, whatever's easiest, I'm good with that too. But
Yeah.
it's just been left too loose right now.
We weren't disagreeing then.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not sure I have all the
I'm
letters
not either.
myself too, right? So, but, you know, I would much prefer to work through the board. So, the way I see this process is I'm working with the board. Public provides input
Right.
to the board. I would prefer not to get into a back and forth with
Absolutely.
the public, right? So if there's a question that the public raises, and they have raised some good questions, and had some good comments, and the board sees it as relevant, then I would ask that the board ask me, rather, and I would
So
really prefer
consider
it.
yourself asked.
I would really, there are many instances where abutters will write novels worth of questions and comments that are clearly answered in the application materials. And it's
I don't have any problem with that response.
in my.
from you.
Okay. In
No,
my
no,
opinion,
no.
I've
Let's-
seen it
let's
turn
not-
into a huge burden.
I don't want to make work,
Okay,
and I think it's perfectly appropriate for you to respond to the board.
okay.
But I'd like to use, without going through them and editing them, if we could just get a comprehensive list of the letters. And, you know, you might look at the first one and say, well, these 5 are all the same, right? Okay, here's our position on that. We answered it in this document.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the one that came in toward the end of the year that's got basically a list of 5 or 6 asks, and I just don't know where we are with that.
Yeah, and again, I
guess
don't
I-
view my
I-
job as responding to to letters from the public. I see it as my job to respond to questions from the board.
Right.
my understanding in subdivision approvals, you have an applicant present the information, his findings. You look over it, make sure that it is meeting the satisfaction of the ordinance, and then the burden of proof is shifted to the abutters to try to prove otherwise. I don't think that's reasonable to ask the developer or the applicant to respond to every individual when they might be replicating additional questions or things that have
I
already
agree.
been addressed.
Yep.
So I think we don't want to put too much of a burden on the applicant. Maybe if the board finds that some of these questions that are asked by the members of the community warrant a response, that's I think appropriate during the public hearing session, that you can
Yes.
ask those questions.
And we have done that.
Yep.
We have done that in the past.
So how did we end up?
I'm happy to answer any question from the board. If it comes from the public through the board,
All right.
I'm happy to answer or address.
I mean, the way I understand this is Galen's going to compile a list of, well, not just a list, but actually a file with all of the abutters' letters.
Right.
And then we have to read through them and then see if the answers are in the application. And if they're not in the application, then we ask a question to the applicant.
We need to represent the
Yeah, the
abutters
abutters.
through that process, a
That's-
review process and at the public meeting.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And maybe a little filtering from the code enforcement folks to help us through that, like, yep, this is covered, or this isn't.
If the information's sent in a timely fashion, that we have enough time to review
Yeah,
it.
yeah, what we got a stack now, and being
Yeah.
able to just maybe have somebody sit and go through those and help us, guide us a little bit as to what it's done versus having 7 of us read through and try to figure it, just seems like a whole lot of extra effort there.
Well, I agree with that completely.
I mean, you can see the packet of information I put together to respond to Acorn Engineering, who is a
absolutely.
reputable
Oh,
peer
sure.
review,
Absolutely.
right?
No,
Oh,
So-
yeah.
I think you're being fair about this.
Yep.
My concern that I'm wrestling with is that our current process isn't making that easy for us or, and in turn, for you.
Yeah.
However, I know from the ones I have seen and read, they come in one at a time, and
Yeah.
they're in my email file somewhere, and maybe I've missed some, or maybe I haven't. There's some significant issues in there, and I'd just like to give it the courtesy I think it deserves to say, yeah, we've gone through, these people have taken the effort to put together a memo, they're thoughtfully worded. Have we answered these? And,
Yeah.
yeah,
Happy
I
to-
think it's right to point out that the board has a responsibility here as well, but we need to make this go in a timely manner, and right now, it's a little bit of an anchor, I think.
Yep.
Galen, maybe afterwards, the next couple of days, you could give us some feedback as to when we could have a set of those. And
Great. When do you schedule your public hearing for?
it is continued to tonight, is my understanding, and I
There's a public,
believe, at least it's been requested by a letter that came in today, and would have been requested by me too, that we got this information, I got mine on Monday, and I think we need to continue the public hearing one more.
no, absolutely not. I disagree.
I hear you.
And I will give my reasons. You want to keep talking, go ahead.
Now, if you want to interrupt, go ahead.
All right. The applicant, one of the reasons we continued the public hearing is we didn't have a lot of information. We didn't have the Acorn responses. Okay? And we had a lot of information from the abutters and their concerns. And in general, we have the abutters' concerns, and we had it then. But there was a disjunct because, excuse me, we didn't have the applicant's answers on a lot of this, especially the flooding issue. Even though some of these things have come in late, all the information that we really need is there and is available to the abutters. This is a preliminary application. It is not one that is final. We're not going to get any more information, really, at this point. I think it's time to finish the public hearing and either say the application is complete or not complete. Then when we go on, there's something about this room that sets me off every time. Then when we have the final application, you can have a public hearing when they see the final with all the information in it, and they can then bring up concerns as to why the application should be approved or not approved. This can go on forever if you keep saying, oh, it came in too late, or, yeah. The application information is in front of you. It's in front of everybody at this point. And I think you need to finish the public hearing. If we had information that we didn't have before, really substantial information that was still needed, you might say continue the public hearing for the preliminary. But at this point, we don't. We have the information we need.
Back to me? Yeah, I was just going to say that because this hasn't come in a week in advance, I think we have the obligation to allow the board and the public a week to review it.
We delivered this electronically and 1 week ago today.
It came to me Monday in the mail. I mean, I know the email came in, but you can't read these plans off of the email. That's my
So
request.
okay, well,
Anyway.
as far as the public goes, it was available electronically and in person at Town Hall 1 week ago,
Okay, no, I understand.
which is what I was asked to do,
Okay,
is submit 1 week prior to the meeting.
I understand. I understand Nina's point that there's another bite at the apple. I know we had a lawyer for the abutters ask that both the preliminary and the final be forums for the public to ask questions on the material. I think that you've got one letter that came in today that said, hey, I have enough time to look at the new material. Can I have more? If the answer is no, you can't, then so be it. But I think we should vote on that. So that's all I had.
Thank you.
Others?
So I just had a couple of questions. So I think I saw where the DEP wants to revisit the site in spring. Is that right? To talk about the vernal pool?
I'm gonna let Jim.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yep.
Because I've been receiving field determinations from the DEP for decades now, and I've never had one that expounded as much as Anna decided to philosophize over the natural resources out there. Generally, you got a couple of statements. Sift out what she had. There's a potentially significant vernal pool. We identified it. We do have an anticipation of studying it come spring. But we have addressed it on the current plan as though it is significant, the way the DEP indicates that we're supposed to. Anna was happy about that. I think Chris Copey, formerly with the DEP, could represent that as well. Anna further found the stream, no. I'm going to say she identified with me on the site a water course, and let's distinguish the difference between the term water course and stream, because finally she says there is a piece of the water course that meets the definition of stream, in her opinion. That's the 200-foot segment that Mike referred to, and that's what we've got on the plan. That was not connected to the pond because by virtue of the scrub wetland that was in between, and therefore we don't think it's a wetland of special significance. The reason she put the wording in about the recommendation for a revisit was to see what part of that water course wasn't even a stream. There's Anna standing out there saying, well, I can't get my arms far enough into the bottom of the channel to find aquatic insects. Chris would understand this. It's a process we use for stream ID. So her recommendation wasn't going to be to go back and make things more inclusive. If anything, it was going to allow us to remove a bigger section. Okay? So that's the reason she added the recommendation. She doesn't care about the vernal pool. We're going to study that. They're not out counting vernal pools per se. In a former time, they had better staff, and they did some of that, but field staff doesn't count the egg masses anymore. We're the hired people to do that, and we do anticipate doing that. But her recommendation for a revisit was strictly to look at the water course, not stream, to determine what part of that water course would go away, even as a stream. I don't know if that was clearly evident in the way she wrote it, but that's clearly what she led me to believe on the site.
So the consequence of the visit in the spring would be, on one hand, no change to the drawings, in terms, I guess, building envelope. But on the other hand, the building envelope could increase?
Could be favorable.
No, not going to do it? Okay.
Not likely?
No.
So the building envelope won't increase because, remember, we're still conserving the rest of that lot, the majority of that lot.
Okay.
Because of the restrictions on area within 250 feet of the vernal pool.
Okay.
So it's really, if it wasn't a stream, we wouldn't have to file a permit by rule with the DEP.
Okay.
If it is a stream, we have to file a permit by rule with the DEP,
Okay.
which we intend to do. So
Building lots unchanged?
unchanged.
Okay, thank you. That was really my question. So then the other question I had was, so on the BMP, so the road slopes, you're gonna collect all the water, 80% of the water, and it goes to a BMP device, and then it goes from there into a pond, some kind of a retention pond?
It actually goes, the BMP it's a shallow, I think the folks who are up here before me in the previous project had a similar BMP. So it's a soil filter essentially. It's from the surface, it looks like a small impoundment, anywhere from 6 inches to 18 inches deep, and it has a very high flow, permeable sand at the bottom. So stormwater goes in, goes through the sand, is filtered, and then in this case, there's a series of stormwater chambers underneath that filter. they look like milk crates, if you will, wrapped in a geotextile fabric. So the water is stored there for a short period of time, slowly released to the surface, and where it will make its way into the man-made pond that's on the site.
Okay, so, and the man-made pond is the one toward the north?
Yes.
Okay, so my question revolves around, say, the 100-year storm. So is there an overload situation which requires the inclusion of some kind of, high volume release so you don't overtop whatever the seal is for the pond? This must be some kind of effectively a dam. Do you have to provide some mechanism to prevent the dam from overtopping? I mean, because I've seen these other places, right, some kind of vertical drain or
Yeah,
weirs
so
or-
this is a natural pond
Yeah,
that is of a size that the amount of additional runoff that's being sent to it is largely insignificant. And so the outlet will act as it acts today, which is its natural state. And so no controls are being proposed to the man-made pond.
so if you got, so the pond is outside this particular development, right? It's adjacent.
Mostly, yes.
okay.
There is a portion of it that extends onto this lot,
So,
yes.
Okay, so.
And the outlet is not on this site.
All right.
And the outlet, I've been out there and I've looked, it's not well defined, right? It's not you saw the channel
Yeah.
we observed out there on the site walk. As you walk up towards the pond, that disappears and it turns into just a wetland. So it's not like
Okay,
there's an area of water rushing to a single point, where you do run the risk of erosion and you need to, or an embankment blowout or something like that. This is a different situation, and I think I'm assuming it's like that because it's been there for decades and decades and decades and has seen large storms and
Oh, yeah. Okay.
and has passed large storms in the past, and so it's naturalized.
okay, all right.
There was 2 large storm events that happened, and at least one of them happened in between my 2 visits with the DEP.
Right,
Yeah, Jim is pointing out there's been some very recent
It's
large
anecdotal.
storms.
I can get the storm data. We've had 2+ inch rainstorms events in less than a 12-hour period. And they were big ones. One was back in December. We had another one in between her 2 visits. And I went back both times, right after the rain. And that pond wasn't changed, but
okay,
couldn't tell. It was insignificant.
All
Well,
right.
to the outlet, that flow was almost identical to before the storm going out.
okay,
Never was it gonna overtop the banks, that I can tell you.
okay,
There's no evidence that stream or that drainage water course has ever overflowed its banks.
all right, thank you. So basically, so it doesn't pose a threat of flooding to the properties is my point. You don't need to worry about that.
He's gonna design a system to accommodate.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's it.
I wanted to also mention that for the calculations, he did utilize the max amount, which was the 25-year rainfall over a 24-hour period.
Okay,
So he did put that is the requirement of your ordinance.
all right, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, the only, when I read through the concerns that have been expressed by the abutters and kind of the documents, it kind of, for me, boiled into 2 things. One was stormwater water, either filling the pond, getting in my basement, on my property. And the other being any pollutants that may be carried with that would impact life. And, this is a great amount of information, but it's really technical. But maybe trying to put that in terms that would help them understand how you've addressed it, I think would be the biggest thing. Having the slope and the curve and all that water now heading another direction instead of over down into the property.
Sure.
Okay, it's not easy to get there from here, and how the BMP works. you know, the actual impact, especially if the HOA's got the no herbicides, pesticides, all that in it, what is the call it that impact on the environment for the things? I think it's all in here, it's just hard to get to.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what's missing, that when you come back, it's saying, we heard you say you're worried about stormwater and water. This is what we did, not in technical, you know, words that nobody understands except engineers.
Sure.
We have addressed it, we've taken care of it, this is how we're working it. The one with the pollutants, you know, this is how we're protecting the pond, the vernal pond and the stream. Yeah, and I think you're there, it just gets lost in the mix. And so if there's a way to kind of put that either from the podium or something to address it, heard your concern, this is how we're addressing it. Heard your concern, this is how it's being addressed. I think that would go a long way to taking it, because I think those are really the two big issues out there around the water. And I think it's covered in what you've put together.
Mike, I think you just did a better job than me asking about individual questions on the butters letters. I
You
think
coached
you
me
really
well,
just,
Chief.
you cut to it. That's spot on. Can I just make sure, when we talk about the impact, I think the concern is not just for the vernal pool, but it's also for that man-made pond.
Yeah, the man-made pond,
Right.
the stream, the whole.
Tell me
thing,
as a
yeah.
layman, someone at some point is gonna salt that road, right, in the wintertime. It's got a little slope on it and all. We're just saying, okay, we're gonna route all of that down through this BMP now.
Yep.
And this-
But, and then
this is-
into the man-made pond. Are we gonna turn that into brackish water? I don't know. Maybe I could understand.
Town stop salting them, was disapproved then?
Good question.
I'm not gonna argue about it. My opinion is we should be doing sand only, but that's a very far left opinion, okay? We're going to minimum use on our private roads.
Yeah.
It's an issue, right?
We get it.
Yeah.
And
And I
it's a,
think-
and
I think
it's
you
a
put-
safety issue too, so you're
I
right.
think, again, with the volumes that we're talking about, I think we're not gonna turn it brackish, you know, and how the BMP works, what it's gonna take out, and you'll be good to go.
I agree with you. Thank you for making that suggestion.
Okay, so I think it's time
That's
to
it.
open the public hearing. Okay, so we're going to open the public hearing now, or reopen. I guess we had it open before.
Yeah.
So if someone would like to get up and speak, identify yourself and proceed.
Hi, my name is Chris Copey. I'm with Copey Environmental. You might have remembered me from one of the last meetings. I'm here on behalf of the abutters, trying to help them understand the permit process with respect to the natural resources and some of the permits that are required. So that's kind of my role here.
Speak into the microphone
Sure.
so that we can hear you.
I'm gonna come up front there anyway. So I do have some comments about, I'm in receipt of the recent submission. I've looked over the plan, and I kind of wanted to focus on the stream and some of the clearing, because one of the big issues or concerns of the abutters is just excess water coming onto their properties via the stream, you know, from the pond down the stream, et cetera. So I'm in receipt of the DEP's letter, and I understand that Anna met out with Jim out at the site, and they agreed to areas being designated as a stream and areas not being designated as stream. The only thing that I'm not seeing here is a connection to the actual plan. Has Anna seen this plan and is in agreement with this plan based on what their site visit was? So I don't know if it's prudent for Anna to comment on this plan so that she can basically communicate to you and the applicant that this is what we're talking about on site. I agree with Jim here, and this is how it's portrayed on the map is how, you know, I reviewed it on site. So I don't know. I mean, might be prudent to do that, because I think there's a disconnect, because I understand that they went out, but has Anna seen this map to confirm that the actual segment that they're actually showing as a stream is the part that she believes is a stream. Is it 10 feet longer, or is it, 5 feet shorter, et cetera, et cetera? So,
We know that Jim and Anna
Yeah.
walked the site together and,
Yeah.
and together determined that these were the sections that were to be
Right.
considered a stream, and these were the ones that weren't. You're basically questioning whether she saw the result of Jim's handiwork then based on the output of that conversation? Because I thought what I heard Jim
Well-
say.
For the
Let me
public
just
record.
finish for a second. I thought what I heard Jim say was that he took that conversation he had with Anna and he captured it on the plan.
right.
Are you saying you'd like Anna to go look at that?
Well, no one here was purview of that conversation.
Well,
Right.
Jim was.
Well, Jim and Anna were, right.
Right.
But has Anna seen this plan so that it matches what they were talking about in terms of the extent of the stream that was
You're saying,
mapped?
has there been a handshake that says, yeah, Jim, you got it right?
Well,
I guess maybe I'm not communicating this right.
yeah,
I guess what I'm trying to say is they met on site together.
Right.
Right. But if you read Anna's report, usually you reference a plan. Say, like when I was at the DEP, I would wait for a plan from the applicant or from the owner, and I would look at the plan and I would say, in accordance with the attached plan, this is what I reviewed. You know what I mean? So there's a connection.
So the loop
Right.
gets closed. So
Right.
I thought, now, you're going to have to educate me here. I thought that the fact that now that plan was going to go back as part of a permit by rule application, that was what was going to close the loop. They're going to go ask for 25 feet to that stream portion,
Right.
and DEP, whether it's the same woman or not, I don't know, but I thought it was the same office is going to come back and say, yeah, that's right, as long as you're 25 feet back from that area.
Right.
Or they're going to say, no, we don't think you should go within 25 feet, you got to go to 75 feet. But
Right.
that permitting process, I thought was going to close the loop. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree. I guess my point here is that the stream stops inside the wetland boundary. The stream stops, because if you look at the 75-foot setback, it doesn't cross over the southern property line. So the stream doesn't go all the way down to the south.
Okay.
So my question is this consistent to what Anna's review of the stream was, in terms of this section being a stream and this section not being a stream?
well, I think of the DEP as someone who is being asked a couple of questions
Yeah.
going out, whether there was a plan or not. One, was the pond man-made? And two, was it a stream or just a ditch?
Right.
And those are the important questions that she needed to answer. Those are the ones that were asked of her. And yes, she may or may not have seen the plan, but she answered those questions.
Just for clarification purposes, isn't the first paragraph of Ms. Smith's letter, the third sentence, state that department staff met with Jim Logan with Longview Partners LLC to review site plans, identify protected natural resources, and discuss potential permitting for the proposed project?
And if I could just make one clear point for for
Mike.
Ed Francis's comment,
Mike.
regarding.
Mike,
Okay.
please.
Regarding Anna and my visit to the site, we didn't agree where the stream started and stopped. Anna told me where to hang the flags. That's a DEP, they've got jurisdiction on it. We had them out there. It was her determination where the water course
You walked
started
away
and
in agreement, is what I'm gathering, because you captured it on the plans afterwards.
I agree.
You may not have agreed with her in the moment, but at this point, you are in agreement.
Yes, and the surveyor's located added to the
Yeah.
plan. I just wanted to make it
Okay.
clear that it was Anna's determination.
Okay. Well, I just want to make that point, for your consideration.
Understood, and
Just
I think
to
it was a
close
good
the loop
point.
on any type of ambiguity. My second,
I've lost. He said they hung the flags. Are you saying she didn't hang the flags?
No,
I really, I don't understand what you're saying. You're saying Anna didn't agree to that. And we hear that Ann did agree to it, so I'm baffled.
Again, I'm throwing that out there because I didn't know the exact, I wasn't purview of the site visit. I'm just making, you could take the information, do whatever you want. I'm just trying to close the loop on some of the questions that I see, that's all.
Does that help it though, what?
Yeah, I mean,
Logan said?
I guess from what I'm understanding is if Anna saw where he placed the flags, then I guess we don't need to look at the map.
Or
Right.
Anna place the flags is what I heard.
I had the roll flag, and she told me.
And then you okayed, okay, all right, so that's fine.
Touch the flag.
All right, no, that's fine. And then I had another point. Again, this is regarding some permitting, but, I understand they're gonna be, seeking some Army Corps permits and a permit by rule. But one thing I noticed that, because we have to assume that it's a significant vernal pool, there's actually an additional permit that needs to be submitted, I believe, and that's not shown on the plan, and that's an individual, NRPA permit for impact number 3. Because we're assuming that, because the applicant's assuming that it's a significant vernal pool, any wetland impact within 250 feet of an assumed significant vernal pool is actually a wetland of special significance. It's not eligible for the permit by rule process.
I thought they were staying further than 250 feet away from that vernal pool. It may not turn out to be a vernal pool at some point, but you've decided it is a vernal pool for the purposes of this application, and you're not going within 250 feet of it. Did I misunderstand that? I did misunderstand it. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
You okay with
Sure, no, I mean.
a little back and forth on
That's
this
fine, that's fine.
So
interesting point?
the area within 250 feet of what we are assuming is a significant vernal pool is
Right.
considered critical terrestrial habitat.
Right.
And the
Oh, you can only
DEP,
touch a certain percentage.
the DEP allows 25% of the area within that 250 feet to be cleared. And Chris is right,
Chris is saying there's a permit that goes.
there is an isolated wetland on one of the lots, I think it's lot 3, is that right?
Impact 3.
Impact number 3 on lot 3, that is within the 250-foot critical terrestrial
Okay.
habitat, and it will need a permit from.
Okay, so
it
that's
will
a third
need an
permit that we-
individual NERPA permit.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, no problem. And again, I don't know if, I don't know what their schedule is, so I don't know if they're gonna actually study the pool before they submit their final, because that's gonna change everything, but I'm just making comments on how it's presented now, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, as it's illustrated right now, the clearing limits are maxed out. So basically, within 250 feet of a vernal pool, you're only allowed 25% clearing on each lot within the habitat. So they've maxed that out. So one thing I just wanted to point out is that they're showing a clearing line, which basically illustrates this, well, if you're looking at this plan, the western extent of the clearing in accordance with the permit by rule standards. However, if the stream stays as is, they're allowed under permit by rule to come as close as 25 feet. However, one thing I wanted to note is that they actually can't get any closer than what they're showing right now on the clearing, because even though for permit by rule standards for adjacent to a stream, they can actually come closer to what they're showing on the cleared area, they've already maxed out their clearing, so that'll actually count towards their clearing.
Yeah, I'm seeing agreement over here.
So I just wanted to point that out, because Mike mentioned that they might go for a permit by rule, but as it stands now, it wouldn't be eligible for permit by rule, and it's actually wouldn't be allowed, because they've already maxed out their clearing
You'll
for
let
the
Mike-
vernal pool.
See if Mike
yeah.
would agree
Yeah,
with that. or
so,
not.
I think, Larry, you, or maybe Scott might have asked this question, but the question was, if this is later determined not to be a stream, would the clearing limit increase? And the answer was no, the clearing limit on the plan is the clearing limit, because what's really driving this is the 250-foot critical terrestrial habitat and our allowance to only clear 25% of that. So there is a portion of lots 2 and 3 that are closer than 75 feet
Yeah,
to the stream, but less than 20, but, I'm sorry,
Right.
less than 75, but more than 25 feet. And that's what the PBR would be sought for.
you're okay with that?
Yeah, it was just a clarification, yeah.
But it's on those two lots?
Right.
And not in the area that would be
Yeah.
impactive to the vernal pool zone?
So-
Okay.
I think that's about it. But I do apologize, I wasn't trying to insinuate anything, fishy with a stream determination with Jim and the DEP. I maybe didn't understand that. They located her flag, so my apologies.
Sounds like there's no ambiguity there, but it was worth clarifying. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, thank you.
I don't know, I think they're still saving some, but
Yeah.
for later.
All right, anyone else? Please.
I'm James Vasenka, my wife over here. We live in 47 Wiles District Road. From your perspective, the driveway to the proposed development is here, my house is over here. And I just wanted to get clarification. The land naturally slopes downwards, but they're saying they're going to grade it so it'll go back towards Wiles District Road, is that correct?
I believe they're talking about the road.
Yeah, the driveway that they're bringing in, yes. And I'm only doing this because you said you wanted to speak to the board, and so, but if you can answer me, is that what's happening? It'd be,
Help us picture it.
yeah, I'm trying to
You're standing
understand
on Wiles
which way
District,
it's
you're looking
graded.
up the road. What's it look like?
Sure. So, if you go into the plan set, sorry.
Yeah, why don't you go around the front side here, because I can't see. I need to see the plan.
Yeah, well, actually, I was going to point to another plan, not necessarily the subdivision plan, and I have a copy here, and the board has a copy. If you go to sheet C 3.0, this is the plan and profile. So on the top of the sheet is the grading plan of the road, and on the bottom is the centerline profile.
Where's Wild District Road here? This, on this side?
Correct. On the left end is Wiles District Road, and on the right is the end of the proposed road. And if you look at the profile, there's a a light gray dashed line that kind of goes up and down in a jagged fashion. That's the elevation, existing elevation of the center line of that road. So if you were to go out there today and walk down where the center line of this road is going to be, that's what the elevation does. The darker solid line, the smooth one above it, is the proposed elevation of the center line. So as you can see from the end of the road, it drains, it's going to slope back towards Wiles District to about station, there's a low point at station 2+65. So 265 feet from Wiles District Road, there's a low point, and then it'll slope back up towards Wiles District Road before sloping back down to meet Wiles District Road. So at that low point, the 80% of this road, 80% of the length of the road will drain to that low point and will enter into that stormwater BMP we talked about.
And being different than a normal road, it's all sloped towards that BMP.
That's the other point. So the roadway, instead of being crowned in the middle, is the highest on the edge at the eastern side of the plan, and the entire roadway width slopes towards the pond.
You're going to run the water away from this gentleman's house, is what I'm hearing.
Correct. And I'll make one other point while we're talking about this particular property. I did see, I saw some correspondence come in today pretty late. I'm not sure if the board saw it, as well as an email that included a photo and a video.
This gentleman's,
Yeah, it's me.
Yep.
I included it because I had taken it at the during the January 10th storm, and it was just barely draining. And that's my other question about the culvert here. If all this water is going off in this direction, I know that that storm, it was just barely draining. And my concern is that, you know, if this gets backed up, the backyard will absolutely flood.
Understood, and it was a striking video, and I'm glad you sent it, because we don't often get to see these conditions while it's pouring rain like that or in a storm like that. Today, if you folks saw the video, this gentleman's yard flooded and it drains through a channel towards this project site, and it, as you know, there is an old driveway or an old area that's built up that we walked, where we parked on the sidewalk. And under that, there's a 12-inch culvert today. So this gentleman's yard drains to that culvert, goes under the existing sort of road bed or driveway bed into this, or towards the man-made pond that's on the other side of it. So that, as part of this project, that 12-inch culvert, which is not in great condition, is going to be replaced with an 18-inch culvert. So that should, is it going to improve the condition in your yard? I don't think I'm not sure much can improve that. I don't think we can do anything to improve that condition, but certainly I think it will, with a larger culvert and with a homeowners association on the hook to maintain that, I think it'll be a better situation.
Yeah, so my concern is just about all this extra water now that's coming off in this direction, and the confidence that you have that with these storm drainage protocols that you're putting into place, that we're not going to get a sudden huge influx, because honestly, the rains are getting worse. They just are. I've been mapping them over the years, and my biggest concern is you have a heavy-duty rain in my backyard, it turns into a swamp. What kinds of things can be done to mitigate that? Thank you for your time. There's nothing we can do.
Thank you. Anyone online? No? Oh, okay.
There we go.
Hi, good evening. I'm Catherine Gay from 33 Wilds District Road. I'm one of the guilty parties to drop off a letter late today, I think. But it seems to me that my questions seem to continue, that I seem to have a disconnect in some of the information that we do get in relation to the plan that I'm seeing too. One of our concerns for this meeting was we did get almost 150 pages of detailed documents. I abut the property, my husband Bill and I, and we do have a lot of flooding concerns. We do have a backyard that is wet a lot, and we do abut the pond and the stream also. So we do have those concerns, and reading over that information, it's really hard to understand, and just giving us the time to speak with somebody that knows more than I do, so to help us better understand what the plan is for that, is really asking for that time with, digesting those documents. The other concern for us has always been the water quality of that pond. From reading the letter from Anna Smith, it sounds to me that she identifies the pond that outlets to the south, which is another wetland area, and then connects to the stream, which is what we see. We've lived there for a long time, and we do see the water come to that south end and then follow the stream. Bill has a lot of video for showing the stream and how it flows the whole length. So in order to, understand that, how that pond, being a runoff situation with all the chemicals from the road, and how that doesn't affect the stream and then the lower properties and the lower ponds that it feeds, that's what I'm not, having a disconnect understanding how that's going to affect that pond and the wildlife that is there. You know, we live right there, we hear it, can't sleep at night in the spring with all the different types of frogs that we're hearing, breeding there, salamanders, turtles we see crossing over to the pond into that wetland area. So that is a concern for us. In Anna's letter, she did say she wanted to visit in the spring to, you know, further analyze that stream. Excuse me? No, go ahead. That's the way I'm reading it. So I see that she connects the pond to the stream or waterway, and that she would wanted to visit in the spring to further analyze that. I would like to ask that the wetlands attached to the pond be analyzed. We know the type of aquatic wildlife that is there. We hear it. We've lived next to it. And to harm that with harming the water in that pond is a concern. The letter that I reviewed from the woman at the IF&W, in hers, she makes the point that on an upland edge of a stream, maintaining 100 foot of undisturbed vegetative buffer for an intermittent stream and perennial stream, or any contiguous wetland. So my concern is the wetland and the pond, the stream, is that a contiguous wetland? I believe that proposed development is on the upper end of that, the upland end, and does that need more protection? Then to hear that instead of the 75, they may be going down to 25 feet away from that is another concern. So I think my letter today to the board was to ask to give us some time to kind of digest that 150 pages and understand it better. And also to, kind of get those clarifications on what those wetlands are.
Can I just comment that it sounds like you have had time to peruse the new information?
I have. I read through the whole thing, but I don't,
Yeah.
as, not being,
I can relate.
not knowing too much, yeah.
It doesn't, my takeaway from, my quick takeaway from the way you said that was, and another week with it isn't going to get you, much further.
Maybe not, yeah.
To Nina's point earlier, this is an intermediate step. And the information is now available to study for the month or months ahead while the final application is prepared. And I dare say it won't be significantly different from what you have there.
Okay.
Furthermore, that the letter from Ms. Smith, my takeaway was she took the conservative view that she said, no, this part here, I mean, Jim, you may be trying to tell me that this is a ditch, but this section seems that it could meet the situation for a stream. They marked it. She wants to come back in the spring because it's interesting, and she'd like to know more, but she hasn't. I think Jim is reading into that letter and his conversation, what I read into that letter, which was that there may be more interesting things here, but it's not gonna cause me to be more conservative. She knows she's let him set flags to put a plan forward to go build in this manner. So I'm seeing it that way.
And I think my question, my confusion then is how do we connect the pond to a wetland, to a waterway, to a stream? And how does that not all affect the quality of the water and whatever's being run off into that pond? How does that not affect everything else down?
Well, it's all in the
downhill.
Batson River watershed, right? It's all connected. All of this, affects everything else. There's no getting around that. You're just being confronted with it here. That's in fact what's going on now.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing the major concern is that you're going to have more impervious surface. that may have, that's gonna have cars driving on it, and so you're gonna have, maybe some gas and oil leaks and the like, and the things that don't, the normal wear and tear, that a road gives you, and then that residue is gonna end up first in the man-made pond, and then wherever the outflow for that goes. Is that compelling? Is it a concern? Yeah, it's a concern. That's why we're talking about it. But it doesn't jump out at me as violating any of the laws. They're going to have to get a permit. They've already gotten a letter from the Maine DEP that says, yeah, we think this section is a stream, and as long as you stay back from that, you're going to be all right. And we think this is a man-made pond, and therefore we don't have regulations that cover it, which, you know, just again, as a layperson, I've always thought seemed a little strange, but that's the way the law is written right now, so.
And I guess the water quality issue that was addressed in the Acorn study is also.
And I think that, and again, the maintenance procedures that are put in place for that, and who's tasked with it, and how that's policed, all of that's important. Make sure that drainage, that culvert stays free and clear and the like, and that pollutants aren't going in. It's a concern.
Yeah, as we discussed, that's what shows up in the final line.
Yeah, so.
And some clarity of how this thing works. The 150 pages of a lot of it terribly technical language. Okay, so
Yeah.
break it down
Get it in
a way
layman's
that
terms.
we can understand, that we can gain some level of comfort in how it's going to work. And I think that's an important thing to get and understand for our 750-foot road exactly how much pollutants could you possibly put into it, and with this BMP, how would that handle it and knock it out? And then going into the pond, you know, the steps there, and, you know, will it be significant by the time it goes down the stream into the pond, across the road, and into the watershed? And I think that is something that can be provided to give us that assurance.
Yeah.
And the way I understood the letter, it was kind of like the vernal pool. We've taken the most conservative shot here, and when this pool's studied, it isn't going to be anything more than what it is now. The stream is not going to be any more than it is now. So the additional study in the spring will just reduce the requirements, not put on additional requirements.
And maybe reduce the concern
Yeah.
through that, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're taking, I don't want to call it the worst case, but the case which is set up with the most requirements now, and they'll only peel requirements away as the additional studies are done. So I think going into the next phase, they're going to have to plan being that more conservative. That's the way I understood it.
So so what you're saying is if things look different in the spring, when the DEP visits,
It will
then.
relax the current requirements that they're building into their plan. That's
Oh,
what-
okay.
Yeah, that's the way I understood what they said.
Well, what I heard was, no matter what happens, they're not gonna change the building envelopes. That's the key thing, even if that's not a vernal pool.
Okay.
But in
the
this
setback from the
location,
stream would change.
in this location, when I hear the word water quality, what comes to mind is suspended solids and dissolved solids. The suspended solids will be taken out in the BMP, the dissolved solids, the salt will go into the pond and then drain. The question is, what is the allowable concentration? What's the allowable salinity? And how will salting the road affect that salinity? So I know that Jim and Mike can answer that question. I predict it will be that the consequent salinity, increase in salinity will be low. Because it's,
Filtering through.
well, no, the dissolved solids go through, right, salt. But when you consider the limited season for salting the road and the limited amount of salt, and then you consider the rainfall, remember, once it's dissolved, it just washes downstream. So my expectation is there'll be effectively no impact on the water quality from this development. But I hope Jim and Mike can quantify that for me.
And I do appreciate the board taking the letters and taking them into consideration when dealing with this.
Absolutely.
So, are there any other people, comments? If we would, okay.
My name's Doug Rayworth. I live on 6 Daisy Lane, so I have the property on the east side of the road, probably the majority of it. I've written a letter to the board, and I would like some answers based on that. I've talked to Jeff and Michael on site when we did the site walk about it too. Regarding like snow load, everybody talks about a rain event, but nobody's talking about snow in the winter. And when you plow a road, half of it goes over one side, half on the other, which half will go on their buffer, but where's it going to drain? It's going to drain into our property. And so how do you mitigate that? That's going to increase my load, where right now that just naturally drains, picked up by the 21-inch trees. It's absorbed, and it's not going to go away. So how do you mitigate that? The other thing was the intrusion of driveways. Everybody's driveway pretty much points into my yard. So that means I'm going to see their headlights every time they leave their house at nighttime. And in the winter, it's going to be even worse. I'll see it in the morning and at night. So we talked about mitigations for that. You know, when I bought the property, I wasn't naive. I saw one lot there. I thought, I'm going to have a neighbor someday. I didn't anticipate 3 neighbors, because I looked at the lot and saw, well, there's a right-of-way for the power lines. I thought the lot was actually accessed from Rocky Pasture. So, you know, that's something I didn't foresee, was 3 lots going in. So I do appreciate you hearing us. And
Are you hopeful that in your discussions that there is the possibility of mitigations for, let's say, the light?
they did say that. I haven't seen anything on a plan, so until it's on a plan, it's talk. So,
Well, one of the things you can do is you could maybe discuss with Jeff the possibility of plowing so that you weren't plowing to produce 2 sides of snow mounds, but basically plowing so that it all went to one side. And that is a possibility, and that can be written into the HOA if they're willing to do that. As for mitigation, shrubs, fast-growing arborvitae and stuff like that, even on your property, would help take up water, one,
yeah,
and would cut light coming through to your windows.
yeah. Okay. You can work on that, too. All right. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Scott Edmonds. I'm an attorney with Bergen and Parkinson. I'm here representing generally the abutters, but specifically the abutters residing on Rocky Pasture Way, which sits to the sort of left-hand side and bottom of the property or the proposed development. I'm not going to rehash what's been said before. The items that have been represented, the water obviously is a concern. Water does run down through. I'm not going to go into that. That's been raised. I did want to sort of follow up on Mr. Rayworth's point about the sort of the whole development is really around the edges of the proposed development is really about around the edges, and there's no buffer. There's no. The greatest impact on this development really is is on the abutters, and there's nothing, and there hasn't really been addressed through what we've seen thus far. Hopefully, we'll see it addressed in the final application. Is just some kind of reference to that this is going to really affect the abutters and how close those houses, those properties that currently are there are gonna be impacted by this development to protect the new houses that will be built. And I think that that's the concern, if I'm sort of summing up these concerns, that's really it. The road is right along the property line. That's affecting, two of the people that spoke today directly. I mean, it is, and then if we look at the south, the water that flows down through whether waterway, river, stream, whatever the final determination is, the water will flow ultimately down in that direction. And there have been efforts made, and I think you've referenced, there's 130 pages of technical information there that we got a week ago. Admittedly, it was a week ago. I'm not denying that, but there isn't that narrative. And even in the small narrative that we got, it specifically states that, well, the water from Lot 3 is just going to flow onto the neighbor's property. I mean, I can pull it up, but that's effectively what it says. I mean, now, that is really those are the, if I want to generalize the concerns, I'm not going to go into it any further, but those are really what it comes down to. It comes down to headlights, because it's right on the edge of the property, headlights into driveways. Because the housing envelopes are so compacted, and they all sit right on the edges of the property to avoid the significant, I know it's not a wetland of significant importance, or WSS, but it's a big wetland. These properties have to sit away from that and against the existing property line. And that's what it really, if I'm gonna sum it up, that's what it really comes down to. And that's why you're getting so much pushback from the abutters, is because of how this is generally designed. And it's all that's allowed because of the wetlands. I would also like to bring up, I mean, just in the final application process, I think the abutters would like to see some sort of enforcement mechanism for the BMP. I mean, the BMP is helpful. I'd like to see some kind of calculation to let us know that the BMP is either going to either reduce or in no way increase the water flow onto the abutters. We'd like to see what the maintenance plan for that will be in the HOA. And I know it's difficult, but some sort of enforcement mechanism that can be enforced by the abutters. Because what happens when these three, out-of-state owners don't care about the abutters and the people who live there full-time? There's nothing that they can do to enforce that. There's just nothing, and because there's no margin of error in how this is designed, there's nothing that can be done to avoid that. So I think that that's something that we are asking to see. I know it's up to the board to determine whether that can be done or not, but that is something that we would like to see there. I'm not going to rehash, it's getting late, I'm not going to rehash items that have been.
I don't think we could include under our ordinances an enforcement mechanism on the new abutters, basically. All right?
I understand that, but I think I'm just making my point.
That would be rather extreme. Basically, if there were serious flooding and this property was the cause of it, I think the abutters who are already there might have some enforcement questions through the town or the courts. I think they would have to go in that direction.
I understand the, my point is I'd like to see in the HOA, to the extent that is permissible in the ordinance, protection, these items to be protected to the greatest extent possible.
But as you're talking about being on the edge of the property and so forth, I mean, even if the road were pushed back a bit and the building envelopes could be pushed back, say there were no wetlands there, the driveways would still go toward the road, and you would still have headlights as they entered the road that would go towards the abutters.
But there would be more opportunity for some sort of vegetation and some sort of buffer zone there that would be able to protect that to some degree.
There might be at that point, and we have asked for that before in certain situations, subdivisions. But the abutters can do something themselves by putting on their line of the property some mitigation as well.
I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that the applicant is the one that is in here asking for the approval.
Yes,
And we're just
understand what you're
raising.
saying. I understand what you're saying, but, you know, when you get new neighbors and you're not happy that you suddenly lose your great expanse and your views and things like that.
We're not, yeah, like I said, we're not, my clients are acknowledged, we're not sort of denying that other people have property rights. We're just asking
Right.
that they be, you know, that,
Consideration be
Yeah.
given to.
Be good neighbors.
yeah.
Yes,
I mean, that's,
no,
but to your point, I mean, the BMP is a complicated system that will, at some point, need maintenance, at some point, need to be addressed, at some point, need to be, and given how wet this property is, it's,
And I think we saw that in the earlier proposal where they put the information in the HOA that how it was gonna be maintained and what was required. And I think that is a good model.
The Glen at Goose Rocks you're talking about,
Yeah,
the
sure.
one this evening, yeah.
Yeah,
Glen.
Glen Goose Road.
And, you know, literally what needs to be done to maintain that, to keep it.
yeah.
And that was put into the homeowner's agreement.
Could I add another thought here? I got to thinking about the Glen at Goose Rocks, and the one thing that's radically different there is that they don't have close abutters, right? They're not at the
Not
extreme
yet.
edge of the lot, or,
Not yet.
it- I'm not following, not yet.
Not
You
yet.
think they're going to? Is that,
Well, there is land around there that has been for sale.
that wasn't my point.
Okay.
I was trying to make a point. So because there are close abutters, it's in the growth area, right? It's not out of Goose Rocks, it's in the growth area. It's gonna be more densely populated. We had an application that's come to us several times for, is it called Hidden Earth, or?
Yeah.
There's a.
Hidden Pond?
Hidden Pond.
Hidden Pond, yeah.
And they had an issue before my time on the planning board with one of the earlier things they did with the septic up there, and the
yeah.
concern for the wells in that area, and there was some mismanagement, the maintenance wasn't done, and there's a big hoorah about that, and rightly so. And one of the mechanisms that was put in place was a reporting of a yearly maintenance that is still being done. We worry about, putting a burden that can't be met on our small but mighty code enforcement office. We got to do something that's practical there, but I guess I just offer that as a thought. Is it because it's more dense and because it's in the growth area and because it has close abutters, is there some reporting mechanism that could be put on the yearly or twice-a-year maintenance? I know it's not determined yet, but it said that's probably what's going to happen with the BMPs. That came into the code enforcement office and went on the record, and the abutters could go look at it. I'm not asking for someone in code enforcement to go out and make sure the maintenance is done, but it would be a record that would be available. And we don't have to solve that here tonight, but it might be possible without a big burden to do something that's a little extraordinary here, but it's an extraordinary
That was
situation.
an agreement that came about after the problems. That was an agreement with the code enforcement office, basically, when the code enforcement office went out to enforce on the problem, because they weren't meeting basically
Right.
the ordinance.
But I'm saying, you don't have to wait until there is a problem. If we had something that wasn't a big burden, and it was just a matter of making something public that was going to be done anyhow under the homeowners agreement, it might address what I think I hear you talking about, Scott. So something to think about as we go forward. And you're not smiling, I see, Mike, but it's going to be the homeowners association. It's going to get done. Just have it filed once a year or twice a year by whoever it is that's doing the maintenance on this.
That was really,
That was the
yeah,
thought.
that was really my
Okay.
point.
So you're done?
I just wanted to confirm that, just based upon the process, because I know this has been a little bit of an odd public hearing, that there will be another public hearing based upon the final application.
The final has a public hearing, yeah.
Okay, I just,
Yeah.
because I just want to make sure
Absolutely.
this didn't,
There are times when we can forego that public hearing, but in this instance, I
okay.
doubt.
I
we would.
appreciate that you,
Okay.
Okay. Is there anyone raising hands for wanting to participate in the public hearing?
We have 3 participants, but no hands are raised.
Okay. So I think we are at the point that,
I would move to close the public hearing.
that was the, so
We can-
I'm going to close the public hearing, and I don't think I have to
Okay.
take a motion particularly.
Oh, I asked first to vote on it, but that's okay. We don't have to.
I'm just looking, before the board closes the hearing, do you allow the closing statement by the applicant? Do you still follow that procedure in your ordinance?
Okay.
If they want to make
Well,
one.
You'd like to make a closing statement?
You don't
Yeah.
have to.
You don't have to?
You don't have to.
Okay,
All right.
Okay.
just making sure.
Okay.
I think we've been trying to do that throughout,
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than waiting until the very end.
And anyway.
We
since
appreciate your
Ed is
willingness
the
to
one
do that.
who Possibly was upset about the, or maybe not
I raised that
closing the public
concern, and
hearing,
that's
but
why
now that you have agreed,
Yeah. Having heard the public and
yeah.
what I think delaying it a week would buy, I don't,
You want to place a motion, that's fine with me.
I'll place a motion to find the application complete.
I'll second it.
I agree.
Agree.
Agree?
Agree.
Agree.
So, what we lack is we have to put.
I have
put
to
together-
produce a
put to-
letter.
Produce a letter that says,
So don't we want a motion to clear it, not complete, but,
we've,
The preliminary is complete.
that the preliminary is approved.
approved is what I think we're after.
That's the motion you had to make.
Okay, so that's the
The
second
preliminary is
motion.
approved. I thought we found the preliminary complete.
We did that a few weeks
Oh,
ago.
we did that a few weeks ago, but
Okay.
that's,
Shall I amend my motion?
yeah, that'd be easier.
Okay, amend my motion, and make a motion to find the preliminary application approved.
I second.
Okay,
Okay?
Concur.
I agree.
agree?
Agree.
Agree.
Okay. That means that we will produce a letter which will go out to them saying that you are preliminarily approved, and we expect to see these things in your final. And those would include the HOA and a lot of the things you've heard about.
And the timetable is that within a month or so, we will get a final application, and that will be put on the agenda. It takes a week or so or more to put it on the agenda, and then we will go through the final application, and then 2 weeks later, if we find the final is complete, correct, there will be another public hearing. So that gives you time to hear what we say about the final application, and then several weeks to come back and go through a public hearing if you need to make more comments or
I think
questions.
Mike has a question.
Just a clarification, my response letter to Acorn is gonna get kicked to Acorn, right? So, okay, good. So there will be some time there, probably.
And you'll be privy to the compendium of public letters as well
Great.
that's going to be assembled, and
Excellent, okay. Thank you all very much.
thank you.
Okay. Well, that leads us to item 3, which is the ever-exciting findings of fact.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
So do you have a copy of the findings,
I don't.
Galen?
Somebody buy it. So this is 132 Marshall Point Road,
Yeah.
site plan application. Hopefully we'll find it. Jim? Okay. Sorry.
thank you, Galen, appreciate that. No
Look
trouble,
at everything, and
all right,
I have a second
No-
copy down here, I guess, to sign after.
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Okay, so this is the Kennebunkport Planning Board finding of fact and decision application for shoreline stabilization at 132 Marshall Point Road. Following site plan reviews pursuant to the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance held on 3rd of January 2024 and 17th of January 2024, and a public hearing held on 17th of January 2024. The Kennebunkport Planning Board makes the following findings of fact and conclusions and renders the following decisions subject to the conditions enumerated below. Findings of fact are as follows. The owner of record and applicant for 132 Marshall Point Road is Marshall Point Realty LLC with mailing address of 60 State Street, Floor 9, Boston, Massachusetts, 02109. In a letter dated September 13th, 2023, the applicant authorized Walsh Engineering Associates, Inc. to act as agent in this matter. Address of agent is 1 Karen Drive, Suite 2A, Westbrook, Maine, 04092. The property has a street address of 132 Marshall Point Road, Kennebunkport, Maine. The property is identified as map 31, block 1, lot 20 on the municipal tax assessor's map. The property is located in the Goose Rocks Shoreland and Resource Protection Zones. The project site is located entirely within the 75-foot HAT, highest astronomical tide setback dimension, and in Zone VE, EL 16 and EL 14, NAVD 88 per preliminary 2017 FEMA flood maps. Applicant demonstrated a legal interest in the property by providing a quitclaim deed with covenant for the property recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds Book 18493, pages 645 to 647 on December 18, 2020. Applicant has submitted the application for the permit by rule, PBR, required by the Natural Resources Protection Act, NRPA, to the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, MDEP. The existing property at 132 Marshall Point Road consists of a land area of 1.36 acres on the south side of the Batson River. Existing features on the property include the paved private driveway, a single-family residence, an in-ground pool, several landscape areas, and approximately 525 feet of shoreline along the Atlantic Ocean. The highest annual tide elevation along the shoreline is 6.3 feet. The property is in the effective flood zone VEEL 10.259, NAVD 88, and preliminary flood zone VEEL 16 and 14, NAVD 88, vertical datum, which have been indicated on the plan set. Along the seashore, there are 3 types of shorelines. First, there's a stone retaining wall. This vertical mortared stone wall, retaining wall, has experienced washouts, cracks, and partial destruction from the December 23rd, 2022 nor'easter and from more recent storms in January 2024. Landscaped lawn exists landward from this wall. Second, the riprap revetment. The shoreline consists of 4-foot to 6-foot diameter stone revetment seaward from the stone retaining wall. The vegetation exists in sections between the revetment and the stone wall. The revetment protects the northeast side of the property from open ocean. The revetment on the western side of the property provides inadequate protection, allowing erosion and washouts. And then third, there's a sandy beach. The Batson River deposits sediment to an area landward from the existing riprap revetment, creating a small sandy beach area experiencing tidal influence. Due to rising sea levels, increased storm severity and frequency, and existing erosion issues, applicant has become concerned about the current and future resiliency of their shoreline. In an application dated December 1st, 2023 and updated January 9th, 2024, applicant proposes the following. The shoreline will be stabilized as follows. The proposed area of alteration encompasses existing shoreline stabilization along 165 feet, approximately 165 feet of shoreline. In areas where washout has occurred with segments of the existing riprap, 4-foot diameter stones will be used to fill these sections. In addition, the western end of the stone retaining wall where cracking or other destruction has occurred will be removed and replaced by a 5-foot diameter stone revetment. This replacement will then continue along the shoreline for approximately 100 feet. Applicant requested no submission or performance waivers from the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance. Pursuant to the requirements of Article 10.10.a of the Land Use Ordinance, Guidelines for Decisions, the Planning Board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes a negative ruling on one or more of the following identified findings, which would otherwise compel denial. So here we go. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K are all yes. L and M are not applicable. N is not applicable. O is yes, and P is not applicable. Okay. Then, when a proposed development will be located within the shoreland zone or resource protection zone, in addition to the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, Article 10, the townwide regulations in Article 6, the performance standards for specific activities and land uses in Article 7, approval of the development will also require that the board makes positive findings based on the information presented that the proposed use. Okay, in this section, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H are all yes. Finally, any negative finding by the board means the application has been denied. The application is otherwise complete. Conclusions. Article 10.10.a of the Land Use Ordinance mandates that the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more identified findings that would otherwise compel denial. And as noted above, the board makes no such finding. Decision, the site plan application identified above is hereby approved. Conditions of approval, if any, pursuant to Article 10.11 and 10.12.e. The applicant pursuant to 10.12.e shall notify the planning board prior to the transfer of rights to construct an approved project. 2, the applicant must record a copy of this decision and provide proof of such recordation in the York County Registry of Deeds before any permits may issue or before any construction activity may commence. 3, final approval from the Maine Division of Environmental Protection must be provided before a building permit can be issued for this project. It's probably already in hand, but anyway, we just put it in here. And finally, the applicant shall comply with all terms and conditions of the Town of Kennebunkport ordinance as well as the Maine DEP approvals, dated 7th of February 2024. So that's it. So shall I move
We
that?
approve the,
Can I move to
the
approve?
FOF as read.
Can I, I'd like to move to approve the FOF as read.
Second. Okay,
I agree.
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 okay, so we'll
All right.
continue signing. Was there actually any old business? I noticed.
We have no old business, it's
Okay.
just, again, that's your format in your ordinance, so
Okay.
we added that there. But
Wow.
you will have old business next meeting, and that is under the new business, the planning board training. So this is just a word of mouth, just an update for you. We have to, every 6 years, do planning board training. There was a majority of you that need that training through MMA. SMPDC has graciously agreed that they would come in here on the 21st, and they can do the training live for you, so.
Okay.
Wow.
That's
All right.
You don't
Okay.
have to go and
You're
have your
assuming
phone.
we're trainable.
Nope, we'll bring them here. Pardon?
You're assuming we're trainable.
Oh, you guys are trainable. I've seen how you guys run the meetings. You guys are fine. You're
21st.
gonna do well.
The 20
Okay, all
21st,
right.
is that your next meeting?
Wednesday. Oh,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Galen, thank you.
So that'll be on the agenda under old business. We'll have
Okay.
Lee J here, the senior land use planner for SMPDC, and he'll go through the ropes.
How long will that take, you envision? Is that an hour?
I'd say, yeah, I wouldn't say it's gonna be that long.
Okay.
Yep,
All right.
okay. That's all I have.
All right.
We're getting busy.
Can I hear a motion then?
I hear a move to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Approve.
All right. So, okay, here's another copy.
Okay, is this one?
There's
all been
two.
I think that one's all signed, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Galen, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay. So, We're all set, thank you, guys.
Thank you.